Okay. I don't know how long this is going to take, but I'm going to try and get the rest of these done. At a time. You aren't paying attention to your surroundings, Matthias, Lorenz said. Your mind needs to be focused on the hunt. Aren't you always the one telling me that? I couldn't deny that I was at fault. I had allowed a fey beast on the larger side to distract me and subsequently missed a smaller fey beast that had managed to get behind me. I sighed and turned around, brushing aside my bangs. My apologies, Lorenz. Thanks for the assist. I had arrived at the Royal Academy early, now a 5th year, and then ventured out to gather materials with Lorenz, now a 4th year, as soon as he arrived. Ironfest's gathering spot had been rich with mana ever since Lady Rosemine regenerated it with a blessing, and the materials it produced now tended to have either numerous elements or plentiful mana. Thanks, Rosemine! You're awesome! Of course, this increase in the quality of material also meant that the fey beasts coming to eat them were stronger than usual. Lorenz and I had come alone, assuming that things would be the same as last year, but it was clear now that we would want another helper or two for our next visit. We've got a decent haul today, so let's call it a day. What's on your mind anyway? Lorenz asked, swiping his stabbed sword through the air to make it disappear, and then fixing me with a hard stare. I could see the exasperation in his orange eyes as he started stuffing his ingredients into a leather pouch. I put my own ingredients into my pouch, produced my high beast, and then jumped onto it. This whole name-swearing thing, I replied. Did your parents not demand that you offer up your name, Lorenz? They did, but I followed your advice and evaded the subject by saying I would do it after coming of age, Lorenz said, sounding annoyed as he climbed atop his own high beast. My father has similarly ordered me to offer my name to Lady Georgine, but Lorenz and I were still growing our mana using the compression method that my father had learned from Lady Georgine. In most cases, it was better to wait until you came of age and your mana stopped growing before offering your name, since you could then gather and use ingredients that were best suited to your final mana quantity. Of course, waiting was less important if you already had materials that you were very unlikely to grow, or very unlikely to outgrow, as had been the case for Roderick, who had received ingredients of very high quality from the Turnish Fallen hunt. In truth, Lorenz and I had received some high-quality ingredients from the hunt as well, but we were keeping that a secret from our parents to delay ourselves having to make a decision. You met Lady Georgine in the summer, right? Lorenz asked. What do you think? I thought, well, that's my father's lady for you. Lady Georgine's visit had taken place after the midpoint of summer. Lorenz's parents had actively hosted meals and tea parties in the nobles' quarter during her stay. But Lorenz had been made to hold the fort in their absence, so he hadn't actually met with Lady Georgine. I had similarly been left behind in Gerlach, but Lady Georgine had stayed in our estate for a night during her frantic return to Arnsbach, which had given me an opportunity to see her. The whole visit had been treated as a spur-of-the-moment decision, but the fact that a room had already been made for her upon her arrival, suggested it had been planned well in advance, as did the fact that my father had returned home by high beast before Lady Georgine had even departed from the castle in Airfest. Yeah, it's kind of becoming more and more obvious that Georgine had poisoned her own daughter to make her sick, so they would have to stop there. Yeah. Georgine's a sick little lady. On the day that Lady Georgine arrived, the nobles who had given their name to her gathered at my family estate. It was a secret meeting of very few people, all of whom had arrived on high beast without any attendance. I was not permitted to join them since I had yet to give Lady Georgine my name, and my father had ordered me to stay in my room. Incidentally, Lady Georgine had known that I was an honor student and wished to meet me. Father had immediately contacted my attendant, who had dressed me at once and then brought me along to this meeting of adherents. By the time I arrived, everyone had already finished eating and moved to our estate's parlor. The fireplace was lit for some reason, despite it being the end of summer, and I could hear the occasional crackle of burning wood. What on earth were they burning? They had to be burning something to have that fireplace burning in summer! In summer! Why would you have a fireplace going in summer? Shoot. The adherents had formed a circle around Lady Georgine, who was wearing a gentle smile. It was clear at a glance that she was their sworn lady. All of a sudden, the eyes of every person in the room fell on me. I nervously stepped forward, knelt before Lady Georgine as politely as I could, and said, I am Guy Gerlach's son, Matthias. May I pray for a blessing and appreciation of the serendipitous meeting ordained by the vibrant summer rays of Leidenschaft, the god of fire. You may. After I gave the blessing and we finished our initial greetings, Lady Georgine reached toward me. The next thing I knew, her cold fingers were stroking my temple. I much appreciate skilled children who know the value of hard work. Grossum, you have raised a fine son, she said, her oh-so-red lips curving into a grin. Her sweet aroma numbed my senses and made my head spin. She's got to be wearing some kind of I don't know. What could she be wearing? It has to be a kind of perfume, but it has to be one that's kind of messing with their heads. Right? Her narrow dark green eyes contained a darkness of unfathomable depth, sending a shiver down my spine. Despite the warmth of the room, my blood ran cold in my veins. I recognized those eyes. It looked just as insane as my father's as he sought to serve his lady with maddening determination. She was facing me as she spoke, but her gaze was locked onto something else entirely. It was as though she looked straight through me, and everyone else for that matter. Her only focus was her objective, and while I didn't know what that objective was, my instincts told me that she was someone to fear. Your praise honors me, my father replied. I did not expect Matthias to grow into such a fine young man myself, but being wrong is sometimes a blessing. He actually sounded proud, which was strange considering I couldn't remember him ever complimenting me before. I could only listen in silence, continuing to kneel with my head bowed low. I couldn't understand why my father placed Lady Georgine at the center of his universe. I wanted to go back to my room already. Unfortunately, I was forced to stay at the meeting. There was no way for me to leave, especially not after what Lady Georgine said next. Her bewitching smile never faltering. Attention, everyone, I have a wonderful announcement. It seems that after all this time, I will soon be able to obtain Ehrenfest's foundation. You have got to report this to Sylvester. Soon. Or tell Rosemine and she can let Sylvester know. Truly, Father exclaimed, you have removed all obstacles? No, not yet, but I am close. Oh, so close. Lady Georgine went on to explain that her movements were still quite limited, owing to her being Ob Ehrensbach's wife, but that she would return to obtain Ehrenfest's foundation as soon as he passed away. No! Dude, you gotta tell them this! Owning the foundation made one the Ob, in other words. If she were to secure the foundation and then take Lord Sylvester's life, she would automatically become the next Ob Ehrenfest. I will return to Ehrenfest without fail, she said. May I trust you to make all the necessary preparations, Grossum? I shall succeed without fail. I await your return with bated breath, Father said, his voice dripping with emotion as he accepted a letter from Lady Georgine. It was my first time seeing him as so overcome with joy. I will need excellent retainers in Ehrenfest, Lady Georgine continued. My son Matthias has vowed to offer his name upon coming of age. He wishes to aid you from the bottom of his heart, Lady Georgine, so I am certain he will serve you well. Oh boy, you are going to be in for it when that hasn't happened. Oh my, when he comes of age, Lady Georgine asked, turning to look at me. Her tone was joyous, but her dark green eyes were anything but. They were scrutinizing my every move, my every reaction. Feeling crushed beneath the weight of her gaze, I repeated the reasoning that I had given to Father. I am growing my mana using your mana compression method, Lady Georgine, but as of yet, I do not have suitable ingredients. Once this growth ceases, I wish to gather ingredients anew. Will you accept my name then, my lady? My, I see. Your mana has grown so much that the ingredients you gathered last year will no longer suffice. As one would expect from an honor student. Of course, I shall accept your name, Matthias. I look forward to seeing how much more you grow. The atmosphere of the room was bizarre and mystical. It was crucial that I keep my wits about me at all times, else I feared it would suck me in with Lady Georgine's adherents. I balled my hands in tight fists as I endured, never letting my noble smile falter for a moment. So we have until we come of age, Lorenz said with a sigh as we flew through the air. Looks like fate's demanding that we give our names to Ob Ehrenfest. The problem is we don't know whether that'll be Lord Sylvester or Lady Georgine. I couldn't have agreed more. We children of the former Veronica faction had two options. Separate from our houses and give our names to the current obstacle family, or stick with our houses and give our names to Lady Georgine. Both of my brothers gave their names to Lady Georgine during her visit, I said. They'll probably take after Father and dedicate their lives to serving her. I can't make that decision yet, but who's to say that she won't suddenly turn the tables on Lord Sylvester in the same way that he suddenly turned the tables on Lady Veronica? All the more so if she knows she can get to the foundation. I could serve the current Archducal family or wait for Lady Georgine to return and serve her instead. In truth, choosing a side seemed absolutely impossible. All I know is Father is serious about ensuring that Lady Georgine becomes the next Ob Ehrenfest. He had some kind of plan back in the autumn. Really? I can't say for sure. They're leaving me in the dark since I didn't offer my name to Lady Georgine. My noticing really had been a coincidence. Father had summoned me while preparing for my winter socializing, and while he was ordering me to acquire honor student grades at the Royal Academy next year for Lady Georgine's sake, I noticed a bright light come from a small teleportation circle. A moment later, something tiny bundled in cloth appeared above it. What is that? I don't like that! It wasn't particularly rare for things to be teleported over while we were gathering our things from throughout Gerlach for winter socializing. However, there was something about this particular instance that stood out to me. The clock that appeared was very similar to the one used by Lady Rosemine, and it didn't look like anything that was usually teleported to Father's room. I really want to know what that is. Could somebody tell me, please? I don't care if it's spoilers, just tell me. It's worrying me. I have received the package. Get rid of the circle at once, Father said to an ordonnance, then picked up the tiny bundle, small enough to hold in one hand, with a satisfied grin. He looked as pleased as he had upon hearing that Lady Georgine was due to return. Father immediately set the bundle away via another teleporter, then prepared a second ordonnance. As soon as you receive the package, burn the circle, he said. This is Bettina, gave him a response. I have received the package, gave Gerlach. Upon hearing this without a moment's hesitation, Father burned both of his circles. What a waste, I muttered on instinct. Making teleportation circles required a variety of materials. Father shot me a cold, exasperated glare. You must not leave loose ends, Matthias. Once something has served its purpose, destroy it. I suppose I no longer need this either. He took a face stone from a nearby drawer, then used his mana to reduce it to dust. It was a face stone linked to a submission ring. Somewhere, one of Father's soldiers had just died. Who? He seemed to have sent a small bundle to Lady Bettina, I said. Do you know anything about that, Lorenz? Her husband is your brother, Lord Fruden, right? Not a thing. They moved out after getting married. That said, I heard that she sent a few things back home to help with winter preparation. Arensbach's mana shortage is really harsh, apparently. In which case, she might have sent that tiny bundle to Arensbach. I don't know what Father had planned, but whatever it was, he may have succeeded. He's cautious and always adds layers of insurance to everything he does. I wasn't sure how far Father's plan to make Lady Georgine the Ob had progressed, but he had been in a good mood before my departure for the Royal Academy, so I could guess that it was going well. What's your plan, Matthias? Gonna give your name to Lady Georgine? Don't think I could do anything but wait. I don't have enough information to choose a side, nor do I know how the situation is going to develop. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that Father was planning to assassinate Lord Sylvester. The seat of Ob needed to be empty for Lady Georgine to return right away. I didn't know the details since I hadn't given Lady Georgine my name, but Father often summoned my brothers to his room where they spoke about plans I wasn't privy to. And you're not going to tell Lady Rosemine or the Ob about this? Lorenz asked. To be honest, I'm agonizing over it as we speak. If my father's intention had been to assassinate the Ob and throw Ehrenfest in the chaos, then I would have done everything in my power to resist Lady Georgine, even give my name to the Archducal family. But apparently Lady Georgine had the means to obtain the foundation, and if she actually managed it, a new Ob would rise to power, and my father and I would thrive as her vassals. Above all else, if Lord Sylvester was to be discarded for the sake of a new government, in the same way that Lady Veronica had been discarded before him, there was no reason for me to go as far as to renounce my family and give my name to the Archducal family. Bear in mind that it will affect your family too, I said. Are you really prepared to renounce them when we still don't know how things will turn out? I like Ehrenfest as it is right now. With Lord Wilfrid and Lady Rosemine bringing everyone together, I doubt the first wife of another duchy will make things any better. I visualized the Archducal family. Apart from Lady Detlinde, Lady Georgine's children were all already married. Even if she intended to adopt a successor, after becoming the next Ob Ehrenfest, she would want to use her blood ties with Lord Wilfrid, Lady Charlotte, and Lord Melkor to form connections with other duchies. At the very least, their lives wouldn't be in danger. Maybe. The same can't be said for Lady Rosemine. I could see her so clearly in my mind, her hair the color of the night sky and her golden eyes looking straight at me. Not only did she have beauty beyond her youth, but she also had a sizable mana quantity and had come first in class 2 years in a row. She had introduced various trends, done a great deal to raise the next generation, and treated everyone like family, whether friend or foe. All in all, she was a model Archducal family member. Roderick had been a member of the former Veronica faction, but she had taken him as a retainer after he offered his name. I had asked him how things were going in the playroom, and with a pleased smile, he just said that she was treating him well. Father says that Lady Rosemine is a commoner who only became an apprentice Blue Shrine Maiden through trickery, I said. I'm worried that she won't be treated well if Lady Georgine becomes the next Ob. Sounds like you're going to have a bad taste in your mouth no matter who you choose to side with, Lady Lorenz muttered, scratching his dark green hair. I replied with a firm nod. Lorenz and I were in a similar situation, considering that both our parents had given their names to Lady Georgine. Depending on who we gave our names to, our actions would greatly influence the other children of the former Veronica faction, and by extension, the very future of Ehrenfest. I want to secure a little more time so I can see what Father and Lady Georgine do next, I said, then exchanged a nod with Lorenz just as we arrived back at the dormitory. Y'all don't have time! Because I don't know what was sent through that teleporter, but I'm very worried that it could possibly be... I'm worried that it's the key to the foundation. I'm worried that it's like a literal key, and only the Archduke is supposed to know where the foundation is. So if Georgine gets that key, if it is that key, I mean, then we're screwed. Ehrenfest is screwed, essentially. Because only Sylvester knows where that foundation is, and if he can't defeat Georgine to protect it, then all hope is lost. Today, Lord Wilfrid and Lady Rosamund were scheduled to arrive at the Royal Academy. We headed to the common room to welcome them, since Archducal candidates passed the time there while waiting for their rooms to be prepared. Back at home, we had always had to be conscious of even the smallest shifts in faction politics. Here at the Royal Academy, however, things were a lot more comfortable. All because Lady Rosamund had managed to break down faction barriers. Lord Wilfrid has arrived, came a voice. I blinked in surprise. The proper order would have been for Lady Rosamund to arrive first. And it seemed that I wasn't the only one who found this odd. Everyone began looking around, questioning to see who knew what. Has she fallen ill again? One student stepped forward. Lord Wilfrid, why has Lady Rosamund not come? Is she in poor health? No, she will be here soon, he replied. I was scheduled to leave first so that she could carry out the final checks on some books we're bringing. She's going to be in charge of them henceforth. There shouldn't be any problems considering the scholars who prepared them. Oh, you want to be extra careful. He let out a sigh, then gazed around the common room. His smile didn't reach his eyes, which were noticeably cautious. It was an expression rarely seen here in the Royal Academy, where faction politics were so much less prevalent. The same look he had given those of us from the former Veronica faction, while Lady Rosamund had been asleep in her dream. Well, looks like we're in danger. I swallowed hard. I didn't know much about what Father had planned, but it clearly wasn't being kept in the shadows. He had done something that impacted the Archducal family directly, and they had deduced that the culprit was in the former Veronica faction. Did something happen to Lord Sylvester? I struggled to believe that my excessively cautious father would have been so careless as to leave any evidence behind, but the wariness with which Lord Wilfrid was watching us spoke volumes. Matthias, seems like we don't have much more time to think things over, Lorenz whispered from where he was sitting beside me, his lips barely moving at all. He was wearing the smile of one welcoming an Archduke candidate, but I could tell that he shared in my panic. I gave a small nod in response. Soon enough, there came another announcement. Lady Rosamund has arrived. It was just as Lord Wilfrid had said. We had anxiously awaited Lady Rosamund's return, hoping she would save us. After all, she had extended a hand to us when we were suffering from isolation and turned everyone's focus outward to competing with other duchies instead. However, the retainers surrounding Lady Rosamund looked as guarded as Lord Wilfrid. Her guard knights in particular made the atmosphere so tense as it had been during the Feast of Beginnings. Back then I had assumed that the strain was because I had been beside my father, the center of the former Veronica faction. But now I wasn't so sure, it just didn't make sense. Worst of all, rather than telling her guards to stand down, Lady Rosamund was merely watching us with a look of concern. I thought that something might have happened to Lord Sylvester, but was it actually Lady Rosamund who was targeted? If the Archducal family had evidence of my father's plot and was going to punish us by association, then I had no idea how many children of the former Veronica faction would survive. Of course, this meant that I was at risk as well. A part of me had assumed that Lady Rosamund would protect those of us who weren't involved in any wrongdoings. She evaluated us more fairly than any other member of the Archducal family, so even if she was turning her back on us, then our futures were very bleak indeed. What can I do? I clenched my fist on my lap. If the Archducal family did possess evidence of some kind, then I couldn't afford to hesitate. The Ob had seen us off on our way to the Royal Academy, so I was confident that we would be safe until the end of the term, but after that, it was unlikely. It's all on me. Everyone's futures depend on my next move. I distinctively looked at Lorenz. It was clear at a glance that, like me, he was feeling sick to his stomach. We had run out of time before we knew it. What say we do all we can to survive, Lorenz? You took the words right out of my mouth. We would seem more trustworthy if we took the initiative rather than waiting to be summoned. Again, I didn't know what Father's plan had entailed, but I was aware that Lady Georgine knew what she needed to claim the Duchy's foundation. Would that information be enough to save all of our lives? No, I'll make it enough. Lord Wilfrid, Lady Rosamund, I said, balling my fist even more tightly as I slowly rose to my feet. Just the act of standing up seemed to raise tensions even higher, though. So I promptly knelt and crossed my arms in front of my chest. I have been relentlessly awaiting this opportunity to speak with you, without interference from parents or factions. There's something I must tell you about the goddess of chaos who comes to bring unrest to Ehrenfest. Lord Wilfrid and Lady Rosamund looked at me with wide eyes. The retainers seemed much less taken aback. Rather, it was like they had obtained confirmation of some kind, and they were watching me through narrowed eyes, as if not wanting to miss even the smallest detail. It was just as I had suspected. Father or Lady Georgine had done something to the Archducal family. It is up to you whether you believe my next words, I continued, but I wish to tell you everything I know. We may have parents of the former Veronica faction, but we are Ehrenfest nobles above all else. We are loyal to Ob Ehrenfest first and foremost. Rosamund lowered her golden eyes filled with concern and surprise and looked back up at me. In the span of such a brief moment, her gaze had turned calm and quiet. I shall listen, Matthias, she said. I swallowed and glanced back at the children of the former Veronica faction behind me. There is one thing I must ask first. My loyalty remains unfaltering, but will Ob Ehrenfest treat us as Ehrenfest nobles? What do you mean? Lord Wilfrid asked. Is it still the case that he permits us to leave our familial influences if we offer our names to the Archducal family? I asked in turn, staring intently at both him and Lady Rosamund. It is. Those who offer their names will readily be accepted as retainers, even those of the former Veronica faction, he said firmly. At the very least, the Ob and I will welcome you. Lady Rosamund nodded. If you were to offer your names to the Archducal couple, rather than us Archduke candidates, then they would accept any name swearing stones prepared before the introductory tournament. In that case, may I offer my name to you as well, Lady Rosamund? The two Archducal candidates didn't seem at all surprised by my request, nor did their retainers. The reaction instead came from the other students. As the stir continued, Lady Rosamund raised a hand to stop her retainers, then stepped forward. Of course, Matthias, I am prepared to accept even Guy Gerlach's son, she said. In contrast to when she had hesitated over accepting Roderick Stone, she now looked at me head-on, a strong light in her golden eyes. Roderick was smiling at his lady from where he stood beside her. Feeling the pride that was positively radiating from him made me certain that my resolve wasn't misplaced. I cast my eyes downward and exhaled slowly at the faces of my family drifted through my mind. There were my brothers, so pridefully offering their names, my father, overcome with emotion, while speaking to his lady, my mother, wearing such a dreamy smile. Their happiness depended on Lady Georgine. Had she enraptured me as she had them, then maybe those feelings would have been enough. But I wanted to serve Lady Rosamund. I'm sorry, Father. My path is different from yours. I shot my head up and looked around the common room. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, but I steeled my resolve and said, Lady Georgine came to my estate on her way back to Ahrensbach. From there, I revealed everything I knew without a care for the time or place. I needed to inform the other children of the former Veronica faction of the dangerous position they were all in, and reduce the impression that I had been impatiently waiting for the Archduke candidates to arrive. Okay. The new children. Wilma, Lord Hartman is calling for you. I thank you ever so much for going out of your way for this, Monica. I will go at once. Lady Rosamund had departed for the castle after the new high priest was appointed. From now until winter socializing began, her guard knights would be taking turns watching the high bishop's chambers to ensure that nobody else attempted to steal inside. All nobles went to the castle for winter socializing and were exceedingly busy there, and the knights were no exception. They would need to leave when socializing season began. However, it seemed that Lord Hartman, the new high priest, was going to continue visiting the temple to give instructions to blue priests, summon Lady Rosamund's attendants for reports, and so on. Lord Hartman's first dedication ritual was fast approaching, and Lady Rosamund would not be returning from the Royal Academy to help. To accommodate her absence, Lord Hartman planned to send her letters to keep her abreast with the goings-on at the temple. I truly appreciated his kind and considerate nature. Lord Hartman, it is Wilma, I said. I realize this is sudden, but new children are going to be brought here soon. How ready is the orphanage to take them? The rooms themselves are prepared, but per my last request, we are still short on supplies like food, firewood, and bedding. I believe that Frey or Zahn might be able to give you a more thorough rundown of what we lack and what we have in excess. Lady Rosamund had said that we needed only prepare the rooms and that they would bring the necessary supplies at a later date. Hartman recorded my report on a board that he had on hand. Understood. Now, these children are going to be anxious beyond words, having so suddenly lost their families. I imagine it will be a challenge to care for them all, but I trust you to do well, Lord Hartman said with a smile. He was Lady Rosamund's retainer and an arch-noble, but he showed not even a trace of arrogance and was kind to everyone in the orphanage. Because they revere Rosamund almost as much as he does. Or not as much as he does, but they do revere her, so yeah, they're good on his book. Back when Lord Hartman had first started visiting the temple, he often visited the orphanage with Lord Justice, the noble who had overseen both the orphanage and the workshop in the high priest's place during Lady Rosamund's long sleep. Lord Justice was exceedingly easy to speak to and lacked the natural haughtiness of the nobility, so all those in the orphanage and the workshop had come to admire him greatly. Still, it seemed to me that the children preferred Lord Hartman. He often told them how Lady Rosamund was faring in the Archduke's castle and the Royal Academy, and they loved his story so much they asked him to tell them over and over again. I had started to worry that he would take offense, but he always agreed to their request, his smile never faltering, even for a moment. Of course he loves that! He loves to be able to tell the stories and have people listen. He was very kind and surely loved children with all his heart. Everyone in the orphanage had rejoiced when told that Lord Hartman was being assigned as the new high priest. Naturally, the role was given to a blue priest, as there had been a risk of someone being selected who would... Normally, the role was given to a blue priest, and there were risk of someone being selected who would treat the Grey Priest and Shrine Maidens cruelly. We were grateful to Lady Rosemary for having offered one of her retainers, and grateful to both the Archduke and the former High Priest for having let him take up the position, despite him not being a blue priest. Now, Wilma, are you done with the task I gave you? Almost. I wish I had finished before the arrival of the children, but the circumstances have left me much too busy. I plan to continue working on it in place of winter handiwork this year. What do you work... Oh, no! Lord Hartman had ordered two illustrations depicting Lady Rosemary. The first was to have her playing the harpspiel in her blue robes, and the second wielding flute-trained staff as the High Bishop. I can only assume that Lord Hartman valued both sights dearly, as the instructions he had given me were exceedingly detailed. The task had seemed daunting at first, but the illustrations were slowly but surely meeting my personal standards. I am afraid you will grow even busier once the children arrive, Lord Hartman said. I, too, will be occupied for some time, so I may have to wait until things calm down to collect them. You wish to be paid in paint, if I recall correctly. Yes, my lord. Money would not be used in the orphanage, so I was instead requesting what I needed to create more art, as well as the two illustrations of Lady Rosemary that I was making for Lord Hartman. I was also making an illustration of the previous High Priest, Lord Ferdinand, playing the harpspiel for Lady Elvira. The spring and autumn had proven so wonderfully fulfilling, but also hectic and very challenging. They can do that now! They can do all the illustrations of Ferdinand that they want! Because he's not there to stop them! Oh my god, there's gonna be a lot of those going out. Oh boy, he won't be able to do a darn thing to stop it, too. Like Conrad, the children coming this year were living as nobles, Lord Hartman explained. Lady Rosemary wishes for them to be educated with those who show promise being returned to noble society, but will the orphanage be able to educate them? We should not face any difficulties teaching them to read, write, do math, and use proper etiquette. Lady Rosemary seems confident of this as well. Our greatest challenge is going to be teaching music. The orphanage does not have the necessary instruments. Rosina had once helped teach the children to play instruments, and my familiarity with music meant I could also provide some assistance, but there was very little that we could do without the instruments themselves. You will not need to worry about that. We will provide you with the instruments from their homes, Lord Hartman said with a smile that indicated that our business was concluded. I returned to the orphanage with Lothar, an attendant working at the High Priest's chambers. Lord Hartman had so considerately instructed him to accompany me to keep any blue priest from getting too close. It appears that you really do trust Lord Hartman, Wilma. Indeed, he is Lady Rosemine's retainer and truly kind. Everyone in the orphanage trusts him as well. We are all so glad to have him as the new High Priest. The orphanage has struggled with the news of the four Grey Priests serving as guards being kidnapped. Lady Rosemary and her retainers ended up fighting so hard to save them, but in truth, it would have been entirely normal to leave them to their fates. With that in mind, Lord Hartman, understanding Lady Rosemine's determination to protect the orphanage and making considerations to keep us safe, proved just what a wonderful person he was. How do you feel about Lord Hartman, Lothar? He prioritizes Lady Rosemary in all matters and works diligently for her sake rather than for the sake of the temple. This is fine for now, as Lady Rosemary is set on supporting the temple, but I must say that his actions and mindset are nothing like those of Lord Ferdinand. Well, no, dude, they are night and day with this. Lothar was evidently struggling to understand what his lord was thinking and act accordingly. It was common for attendants to have a hard time when assigned to serve someone else, so I imagine that all the attendants of the High Priest chambers were feeling the same way. I imagine so. It'll probably take a while. During his time here, Lord Ferdinand expertly balanced traditional methods with Lady Rosemine's new ones, Lothar noted. Lord Hartman, in contrast, intends to push through only Lady Rosemine's methods. I expect the temple will change even more than it already has. Oh, I have a feeling it will. Just based on that information. The ways of the temple had changed dramatically in the last few years since Lady Rosemary had accepted the role of orphanage director and then High Bishop. I couldn't fathom what even greater changes would entail. No matter what happens, Lady Rosemary will not change the temple or orphanage for the worst, I said. We can be certain of that. You really do trust her, Wilma. Indeed, she is the saint of Ehrenfest, after all. Lothar chortled. Apparently, Lord Hartman always said the same thing. Delia, Lily, we are soon going to have an influx of new orphans, I said. I am told they are the children of nobles. Delia already had experience with infants, having started looking after Dirk when he was still at breastfeeding age, and Lily was the only Grey Shrine in the temple with experience giving birth, so they had inevitably ended up spending more time with the youngest children than anyone else. What could have happened for so many children to be coming to the orphanage at once, I wonder, Delia said. Security had increased ever since Brother Egmont allowed a noblewoman into the temple, the Grey Priests were kidnapped, and Lady Rosamond was targeted. The orphanage itself was the same as ever, but the atmosphere in the noble section of the temple was said to have changed completely. Fran had said that whenever Lord Hartman spoke of winter plans, he was always highly concerned with the movements of the Blue Priests. Lord Hartman wasn't even allowing their attendants to go near the orphanage. Grey Priests and Shrine Maidens cannot refuse orders from Blue Priests, so in many cases it was better for us to not know these things. We will also be able to look out for the children without any bias if we do not know the reason they ended up here. We had taken in a noble child, Conrad, once already. He had chosen to leave his home after receiving terrible abuse, so he had adjusted to life in the orphanage without issue, but I wasn't sure whether these other children, who had so abruptly lost their homes, would welcome the new environment so readily. I was a little worried about them. In any case, I must finish the illustrations of Lady Rosamond for Lord Hartman before we grow busy with the new children, I said. Please keep an eye on things so that I am not distracted. Understood. Lord Hartman certainly loves Lady Rosamond, doesn't he? That's why I'm saying the author could have gone in a very different direction with this. She could have said, essentially, that those two ended up together in a romantic way, and it wouldn't have changed anything with Hartman's personality. It wouldn't have changed things at all. Except him, well, instead of extolling her actually, he still would have probably extolled her virtues as a Saint of Erenvest, but he still would have gone with, romantic stuff, too. Oh, dear Lord Almighty. That would have been even worse. That would have been worse! Dealer replied, sounding exasperated. It was an understandable opinion to have, considering that he seemed to segue into talking about his lady whenever he came up to the orphanage, no matter whom he was speaking to. Though Delia loves Lady Rosamond too, I'm sure. Delia certainly appreciated how much Lady Rosamond cared about Dirk. She had worn a genuine smile for quite some time, after Lady Rosamond expressed her concerns about Dirk generating too much mana. Delia was quick to deny it, so I decided to hold my tongue and watch her with a warm smile, but Lily showed much less restraint. She gave a mischievous smile and giggled with a hand over her mouth. Oh, my Delia, but do you not always join him in his conversations about her? I seem to recall the many, many occasions on which you've told him about the time Lady Rosamond used the Shield of Wind to save Dirk. That was just... jeez, is there anything wrong with that? And as an apprentice Grey Shrine Maiden, I can't just refuse to answer when he asks me about the moment I found Lady Rosamond the most beautiful and divine. And it's not like I can give him any more recent examples since I'm stuck here in the orphanage. Delia had turned bright red. You really do throw politeness to the wind when someone points out the truth and you get all flustered. Isn't it cute, Wilma? No, I don't, Delia protested, now becoming teary-eyed. The very question made me giggle. Delia really was adorable when she was expressing her emotions. I gave Lily a very light scolding for teasing her before heading off to work on my illustrations for Lord Hartman. Because I was Lady Rosamond's attendant, I had a private room where I kept my art utensils and such. The number of personal belongings I owned had grown considerably. I switched into clothes that I wouldn't mind getting dirtied, put on an apron, and picked up my brush. Then, after taking a slow breath, I looked down at my illustrations to progress. As an artist, this was the most important part of my day. I searched the depths of my soul, trying to unravel which colors I should use and how I should use them, delicately applying one layer after another to convey Lady Rosamond's beauty as neatly as possible. Trying to figure out how to show the glossiness of her hair, which was as deep and mysterious as the night sky, and how to color her golden, gently smiling eyes was ever so much fun. But at the same time, it required complete seriousness. I felt that it was important to show the contrast between her days as a Blue Shrine Maiden, when her eyes had become so emotive, and the present. She had grown used to disguising her emotions, so her expressions were now so much more reserved. Is the distinction clear enough, though? I set down my brush, put the two illustrations on an easel so they were side by side, then stepped back so that I could properly compare them. The one depicting her as the High Bishop exuded a more muted innocence than the other, and it made her come across as more of a fine young noblewoman, both in her expression and in her posture. Lady Rosamond's long slumber meant that it was difficult to gauge her growth, but a closer inspection proved that she had matured so much to protect her family, the orphans, and now Erenfest as a whole. According to Monica, who served her much more closely than I, she had started to mature in other ways as well, particularly since the end of summer. The ceremonial robes that Lady Rosamond had worn during the autumn coming-of-age ceremony apparently now looked noticeably shorter on her. Yay! She's growing! Naturally, it was beneath Lady Shaft's bright rays that children grew the fastest, so Monica was suggesting that Lady Rosamond be remeasured next spring so that her clothes could be adjusted. And she will only continue to grow. I cannot wait to see how beautiful she becomes. Of course, there was a second reason for me to keep a close eye on Lady Rosamond's growth. I was certain that Lord Hartman would order more illustrations from me in the future. He probably would. He will. He definitely will. A short time later, not even 10 days after winter socializing had started, The attendants at the High Priest's office began bringing children to the orphanage. Lord Hartman wanted them registered as orphans about as quickly as the knights were arriving with them. There were children of all ages, from toddlers still struggling to walk to children as old as Dirk and Conrad. They were wearing rather elegant clothes made to fit them, but this nicety only made their tragic situations that much more apparent. Some were in tears, while others were glaring at us warily, but they were all visibly scared. 4 out of every 5 were clutching beautiful magic tools. There are 17 in total, Wilma. This is the last one, Hartman says. He brought the last child to be registered. Lothar, Gil, Fritz, and Monica were with him. The children recoiled in fear upon seeing Lord Hartman, but he simply regarded them with his usual bright smile and said, "From today onward, this place is your home. Being in the orphanage means that you are no longer nobles, and your lives will change drastically as a result. Be grateful to Lady Rosemary, for her compassionate heart is the very reason you were given this opportunity." Lord Hartman went on to introduce those of us who would be looking after the children in the orphanage, then called over Dirk and Conrad. Before speaking to them, he crouched down such that he was on their level. He always did this with the orphans. It was one of his many good points. Hartman's awesome. He still is awesome, even despite him being obsessed. Dirk, Conrad, the children here have all just lost their families, Lord Hartman explained. I want you to teach them how things work here in the orphanage. Lady Rosamund has resolved to save them, and your task is to help with that. Dirk and Conrad responded with firm nods. Lady Rosamund already saved us. We want them to be saved too. You're both such good kids, Lord Hartman said, mussing their hair with a gentle smile. They're feeling scared right now, but I want you to teach them the vastness of Lady Rosamund's compassion, and just how much they owe their lives to her. Right. Lord Hartman turned back to the new orphans. Everyone, Conrad was once a noble as well. In that sense, he is the same as you. He understands the difference between living here and in the noble's quarter better than anyone. You can ask him any questions you may have, but I will return during the dedication ritual to see how you are all doing. From there, the Great Priests were instructed to help move the luggage. Fritz and Gil gathered together those who were used to doing manual labor in the workshop and started at once. Meanwhile, the knights were going to be bringing in furniture and such for the children. If we had Lady Rosamund's high beast, then we could have moved all this in one fell swoop, Lord Hartman remarked. Instead, we must resort to using wagons. My lady truly does create one splendid thing after another. After extolling the virtues of Lady Rosamund's high beast, Lord Hartman left the orphanage with Lothar, Gil, and the others returned not long after with the first pieces of luggage. We would need to divide the work between the Great Priest and the children, using the contents of the boxes to begin setting up the new orphanage rooms. For now, however, Lily and I embraced the young children who were crying for their families. Oh, they need hugs. They need hugs. Now, Delia said, there's no time to cry. We are preparing space for you to sleep. Please set them up yourselves. She directed the children while Dirk moved to demonstrate. You can start with this mattress. Someone take the other side. You can leave your magic tools here for now. You won't be able to eat while holding them, Conrad told the children. He was best suited to guide them since he knew what noble life was like. But they'd show no signs of moving. Some even tightened their grips on their magic tools. Conrad sighed, looking especially troubled, and added, As Lord Hartman said, we are no longer nobles. You are going to be living here, so you need to learn to follow our rules. The children stared at Conrad with wide eyes. One girl in particular looked positively incensed. I moved to shield Conrad from her glare, then knelt down so that I was eye to eye with her. I am aware that nobles do not think highly of the temple, I said, and it is only natural that you would feel uneasy about living here. However, there is no avoiding that you must adapt to how we do things. All we can do is help you. The girl glared at me as well, radiating the dignity of a noble despite being so young. Her face then twisted in anger as if she had last found an opportunity to vent her frustration. You will help us? What do you mean to say that you will assist us in returning to noble society? Do not lie to us. Oh, but that is precisely what I mean. Such is the job that has been given to me. My response caught the girl off guard. She stared at me for a moment, then muttered, What? Oh my, has Lord Hartman not mentioned this? Lady Rosamund intends for you all to be taught to read, write, do math, demonstrate etiquette, and play the harpsichord at least to the level expected of a med noble. Furthermore, I have been told that the most promising of you will be baptized as nobles with the Archduke himself as your guardian. The older children's eyes flashed with ambition. I can only assume that the most enthusiastic among those were already close to reaching their baptism. It was better to have an objective to work toward than wallow in sadness, even if that objective was simply to leave the orphanage. It is up to you all of you to work hard, I said with a smile. Lady Rosamund and Lord Hartman will of course be receiving reports on your progress. A child standing behind the wide-eyed girl suddenly looked up, brimming with determination, and placed his magic tool where Conrad had indicated. I'm going to get this education and go back to noble society, he declared. The boy then grabbed the opposite end of the mattress that Dirk was holding. The others had been too daunted to act, but now that somebody else had made the first move, they gradually began to follow suit. Only the youngest children remained frozen to the spot, unsure of what to do. Let's play once we finish getting the mattresses in place, Dirk said to the boy who had moved to help him, his voice bright. We have cards, have playing cards, and a lot of books. The boy merely pursed his lips in response. He wasn't quite ready to open up to the idea. Dirk laughed unfazed. I haven't even lost to Conrad yet, he continued. If you can't beat me, then you'll never get to be a noble again. I practice with my older brother. I will not lose to you. We'll see about that. I'm Dirk. You? Bertram. I will ensure that my talents are recognized as the best of all those here and return to noble society as soon as I can. The older children who had decided to play along in the hope of returning to noble society began mimicking Dirk and Conrad, and their time in the orphanage started to progress smoothly. There were quite a few surprises, of course, but they did their best to assist us with work and took their studies very seriously. Our limited resources meant that the children had to share instruments during harpsichord lessons, but they worked their hardest all the same, since they needed to know how to play for their debuts. Dirk and Conrad were in turn being influenced positively by the new children who had such clear goals in mind. They had started practicing music despite not having been very interested in it before, made friends to play cards and playing cards with, and were now cycling through victories and defeats. Conrad had finally experienced winning after so many losses against Dirk, and it was clear how much this was motivating him. Yay! According to Delia, who was looking after the oldest of the new orphans, there were still nights where some of the children cried quietly into their pillows. She hadn't been able to speak to them about it. Whenever she would go to check on them, they would pretend to be asleep. So she had settled on just carefully watching over them the next day. The oldest children had it best since their baptisms were so close. Meanwhile, the youngest were still crying for their families almost each and every day. Aww. Lily and I did our best to embrace and comfort them all, but we didn't have enough hands between us. In truth, I was a little sleep-deprived, and no sooner had that thought crossed my mind than Lord Hartman appeared. He had with him 6 gray shrine maidens and 4 gray priests, the attendants of blue priests who had apparently been arrested along with their families. The blue priests were not involved in any crimes themselves, but they cannot live as blue priests without support from their families, and we needed to bring them in for questioning either way, Lord Hartman explained. Of course, we gave any attendants who wished to be arrested with their lord the opportunity to go to the castle, but nobody expressed an interest, so we have brought them back to the orphanage instead. Their food would arrive from the rooms of the blue priest later on. He then gave Lily and me a small grin and said, "The number of children has grown considerably. You will need as many helpers as you can get." No, that's exactly right. Lord Hartman's profound kindness washed over me. I expressed my gratitude, then went to my room to fetch the illustrations of Lady Rosamine. "Lord Hartman, here are the pictures you ordered. How are they?" I asked upon my return, spreading them out on a table in the dining hall. Lord Hartman peered at the illustrations. His orange eyes suddenly began to sparkle, and a sigh of awe passed past his lips. "Absolutely splendid. It is clear to see how much her divinity has increased since her days as a shrine maiden," he said, confirming that they met his expectations. It was such a relief to know that even the harshest judge of all was pleased. "Please let me see, Lord Hartman," Conrad said, excited. "They're of Lady Rosamine, right? Wilma's draws in her room, so I haven't been able to look at them yet." Hartman thought for a moment, then said, "You may look, but only if you stand back and vow not to touch them under any circumstances." Dirk and Conrad agreed, and soon enough, they were showering my illustrations with praise. This must have drawn the attention of the other children, as they all came over to look as well, albeit from the agreed-upon distance. The kids who have just joined us have presumably not had the chance to see Lady Rosamine. This is an excellent opportunity, Lord Hartman said. These illustrations depict the saint of Ehrenfest, who is beloved by Mestinora, the goddess of wisdom, and reflects the purity of Flutraine, the goddess of water. Her hair sparkles like the night sky, as if draped by the god of darkness's cape, and her golden eyes sparkle as though containing the goddess of light herself. I wonder how true that is, to be honest. Because, I mean, the next arc is, known as Avatar of a Goddess. So, yeah, we'll probably find some stuff out. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just guessing. The new orphans listened with their mouths agape. Lord Hartman's speech had become so poetic toward the end that I could imagine the younger ones had struggled to understand him. "Of course, Lady Rosamine's wondrousness does not end with her beauty," Lord Hartman continued. "Her deeply compassionate heart is nothing short of divine, and she has the exceedingly rare qualities of a true saint. Or, at least, that's what I used to believe, but something occurred quite recently that has forced me to reconsider. Perhaps she is not a saint, but a genuine goddess." Oh, what happened there? No! What happened with that? Wait, was Hartman present when she did the magic circle? Oh, if he was, then that would explain it. "The goddess of mercy," Dirk replied without missing a beat. "She did save the Grey Priest, so she surely is a goddess," Conrad noted. "Oh no! Oh no, oh no, oh no. Everybody's gonna be calling her a goddess now. That's gonna probably make some of the gods mad. Oh, I don't know, maybe." The other children were completely lost, but Lord Hartman was now invested in his preaching and wouldn't allow something as small as the confusion of others to stop him. It was on the day... Yes, okay, what? He was there. Okay. It was on the day Lord Ferdinand left for Erinsbach. She cast a rainbow blessing upon our 3 departing associates. Do you understand now? Do you realize how special it is to pray to all of the gods and earn blessings from them all in turn? I don't really understand. Very well, then I shall explain. Oh, no. And so Lord Hartman began a gleeful explanation of magecraft. He spoke at great length, but to summarize, Aevaglade was on bad terms with all the gods except Geduld. So forming a prayer with them all is very difficult indeed. Yet Lady Rosamund had accomplished it with relative ease. Lady Rosamund's incandescent eyes sparkled with a divine rainbow as if all the gods were contained within them. Then with her staff in hand, she drew in the air a magic circle that none had seen before. Light followed the twists and turns of her staff until the circle was complete, and from her beautiful lips a blessing was woven. The circle shone with the divine color of each god as their names were called, and we were all struck by the sheer beauty of the sight. It was akin to witnessing all the gods gather in one place. Light of various colors spilled from the edge of the circle until at last a rainbow blessing flew out. All those gathered watched in awed silence while Lady Rosamund quietly smiled. What humbleness! What superiority! It was more divine than anything, and at that moment I wished to pray to Lady Rosamund herself. Oh my god, he would do it! He would do it! Oh my god. I think this is probably going to solidify him giving his name to her, even if she doesn't want it. How long is a bell? Can somebody tell me? Because apparently in the end, Lord Hartmut sang Lady Rosamund's praises for an entire bell. How long is that? An hour? Hour and a half? 2 hours? Jesus Christ, dude. When he eventually finished, he exhaled in satisfaction, then looked around across all those gathered in the orphanage. Now then, everyone, let us offer our prayers to the mighty king and queen of the endless skies, the mighty eternal 5 who rule the mortal realm, Flutrain, the goddess of water, Leidenschaft, the god of fire, Shizaria, the goddess of wind, Geduld, the goddess of earth, Aevaglade, the god of life, and finally Lady Rosamund, the saint of Arenfest. Oh my god! Everyone shot up their hands and raised their left knee into the air. That is everyone except the new orphans. They recoiled at the sudden movement and started looking around. We have been so busy with handiwork and studying that they had not yet been taught how to pray. I wanted to teach them before we begin our daily studies. My intention was to do all I could to help the new orphans adjust to the temple's way as soon as possible. Okay, here we go. What's this? I wonder what this is. Winter resolution. Come on, Camille, hurry, Dad shouted as he ran down the stairs. You're telling me to hurry, I shouted back, running after him with everything we needed clutched to my chest. We're late because you wouldn't get out of bed. I wonder what they're doing. Okay, this is from Camille's point of view. It was a sunny day, and that meant one thing. Peruse. We had meant to leave to gather some earlier, but I had taken Mom and me ages to get Dad to properly wake up. We're out of time, Camille. Get on the sled. But Dad, quick, we won't be any Peruse left at this rate. There was no point arguing with him. I gave up and climbed onto the sled, which Dad then pulled along as he started running. I gripped the edge of the sled so I wouldn't fall off and puffed out my cheeks. This sucks. I'm totally old enough to run now. I was well aware this was our best option. We were late, and there was no chance of me keeping up with Dad all the way to the forest, but still, I wanted to get off the sled before my friends spotted me. Everyone would laugh if they saw me getting pulled along with all that stuff. Bet they'll think I'm a baby who can't fend for himself. And it was Dad who overslept, not me. Gunter, came a voice from reached the gate. Gather and peruse when you're this busy? Must be rough. Can say that again, Dad replied. Anything happened that I should know about? Dad was talking to a guard. We needed to hurry if we wanted to get any peruse, but I stayed silent and just watched them. Dad had told me before not to interrupt his conversations at the gate since they were to do with his work. There were a lot of new faces in the orphanage group that came by. Les and Gil were there, so I let them all through, but do you know anything about all this, Gunther? Probably some top-secret Archduke business. I'll ask if we cross him in the forest. It was normal for Dad to be busy during the winter. There was always snow to shovel and drunks to deal with, but this year he had even more on his plate than usual. Northgate had received some special jobs from the Archduke himself. If the orphans are here, does that mean Dirk and Conrad are going to be in the forest too? I can't wait to see them. During autumn last year, when I'd gone to the forest with Lutz for the first time, I ended up meeting Dirk and Conrad. They were both orphans and were about my age, and they understood me no matter what we spoke about. The orphanage where they lived also had the toys and picture books made by the Rosemary Workshop. Lutz had said that I couldn't discuss those toys, not even my favorites, with any of our neighbors, so I was real glad to finally have another chance to talk about them. I'd once had another older sister mine, but she died a long time ago. Nobles in the temple had apparently been involved, and my parents had told me that the High Bishop was giving me toys. From her workshop out of sympathy. It was a nice gesture, but we were still wary about having any kind of contact with nobles, so I wasn't allowed to talk about them or the toys. I couldn't remember the first time I found out about mine, but one thing I remembered clear as day was Mom, Lutz, and Thule happily talking about her, saying mine this and mine that. I stopped the moment I asked who this mine person was, and that was when I'd realized that she was someone I wasn't allowed to talk about. I'd already promised Dad that I would keep my mouth shut, so I didn't plan on bringing her up again. Back when I'd first gone to the forest with Lutz, I had been told that I could talk about the toys with the orphanage kids, but not about mine. This was all well and good, but what could I even say about her? I'd never actually known my older sister. And next time I'd seen Dirk and Conrad in the forest, I'd make sure to bring cards with me. Dirk had sometimes beat me, but I'd always won against Conrad. That had all changed when spring came around, though. Conrad suddenly became a much better player, and winning against him became way harder. Frustrated, I started practicing with Mom a lot more, and often and sometimes when Thule when she came home. Dirk, Conrad! We arrived at the forest and saw the orphans all gathering together. It was just as the guard had said. There were a lot of unfamiliar kids among them. They must have been their first time looking for Perus, as Lutz and Gil were teaching them how to go about gathering them. Lutz, Gil, Dad called. Want to gather together? You're going to be offering what you find to Lady Rosemine, right? Lutz frowned a little and said, well, I don't know if she's coming back this year. Lady Rosemine's usually returns to the temple midway through winter, but I assume that it wouldn't be the case this year. Actually, we're going to be putting any Perus we find in the ice room, Gil added with a grin. Lady Rosemine always looks forward to them, so we want to keep as many as we can. It also turned out that Lady Rosemine loved Perus enough to get excited about eating them every year. There was a place in the temple that was basically winter all year round, and Perus kept there wouldn't rot even in spring. The temple sure has some weird places. Yeah, definitely. Camio, you can go gather Perus with the orphanage children, Dad said. I need to speak with Gil. Got it. Dad and Gil went off somewhere. It was probably to do with work again. Meanwhile, Lutz and I went over to the orphanage children. Dirk and Conrad were teaching the new faces how to gather Perus. And that's why we take turns gathering the fruit, Dirk concluded. Must I really dirty my hands? Aw, shut it, Bertram. How many times have I told you? Those who don't work don't eat. The new kids all seemed strangely cocky. Some were lounging about, not even pretending to listen to Dirk's advice. Can't he just exclude anyone who doesn't want to pay attention? Things look pretty rough, I noted. Oh, Camio, been a while, Conrad said when he noticed me. Things have been way busier, what with us getting so many new kids at once. Seems like Dirk and Delia are always mad about something or another back in the orphanage. I wish you could see it. They shout in the same way and everything. In the past, Dirk and Conrad had complained about having nobody to play with since there was so few young kids in the orphanage. But now they had more than they knew what to do with. There were maybe 10 kids in total, and according to Conrad, there were some even younger ones still at the orphanage. Where do they all come from? I wish we could play cards here in the snow, Conrad said. We've all been practicing together, so you're going down the next time we play. He was surprisingly confident for someone who normally lost and sat around pounding. I actually started to worry. Of course he and Dirk were getting better when they had this many people to practice with. I'm getting better too, I said. Even beat Renat the other day. Renat? A girl from the Gilberta Company. Oh, that's Karina's kid! Nice! Before I could say anything else, Dirk and Lutz called out to us. Hey, Conrad, Camille, can you help us show these kids the ropes? I didn't waste a moment before making my way over. First, I need to demonstrate how to climb a Peru tree. It had been just before winter when I first met Renee. Thule had taken me to the Gilberta Company, and as it had been my first time going to the north part of the city, I had worn some clean clothes she'd made for me that looked a lot like the ones worn for baptisms. The buildings there were way more colorful than the ones we lived in. They're so pretty, aren't they? The old paint was washed off when the Archduke cleaned the whole city at once, so the buildings had to be repainted, Thule explained. She then giggled to herself and added, remember when Mr. Deed was grumbling about how much work there was to do? The Archduke's magic had cleaned all the wooden walls in the city and turned our roads into stone, part of our buildings sparkly white. It's actually been pretty bad for the rich because it had stripped the paint from their establishments along with all the grime. I heard that things were especially tense when they had to prepare for the merchants of other duchies showing up. I'm sure Dad was always having to patrol the area. How old is Camille by this point? I don't think he's had his baptism yet, so actually, never mind. This isn't nobility. I couldn't really remember how the city had looked before, but everyone always spoke about the change being so dramatic. One thing that had stuck out with me, though, was something the Dad had said when patrolling the other soldiers. The Archduke was planning to shoo us all out and remake the city from scratch, but Lady Rosemond stopped him. Now we've got to make sure it stays clean. This is the Gilberta Company where I work, Thule said when we arrived. Be sure to speak politely from here on out. We took the stairs on the side of the building up to the second floor, then Thule announced that we were here. She spoke and acted so differently from when she was at home. I straightened my back just like when she and Les had taught me as the servant led us inside. So you're Camille, huh? The boss of the Gilberta Company said. asked welcome. He went on to introduce me to his family. There was Mrs. Karina, Lady Rosemine's seamstress, who Thule respected so much, and their children, Renee and Nut. Nut. What the fuck? Why would you name your kid that? There was also Mark and the boss of the planting company who were here today by coincidence to help with teaching Renee. I was told to play cards and karate with the other kids. Mark and the boss of the planting company even joined us. Nut was so young that he wasn't even a challenge, but I lost about half of my games against Renee. Renee, whatever. I'm just going to say Renee just because it's easier. Told you, didn't I? The boss of the planting company said with a grin. I'm not winning because I'm an adult. You're losing because you're not good enough. Renee puffed out her cheeks and looked at me. Join the Gilberta Company, Camille. We can keep playing until my win rate is 100%. How does that sound to you? I didn't know how to respond, but as I sat there at a loss for words, Mr. Otto joined in with a smile. Good thinking, Renee. That's my daughter for you. Camille, how about you come work for us as a Lahange? Surprised that the boss himself was inviting me, I glanced over at Thule. She worked as a Lady Rosemine's hairpin maker here at the Gilberta Company, and she was even being trusted to design outfits and pick out cloth for her. Her status had shot through the roof as a result where we lived. Someone becoming this successful before becoming of age was pretty much unheard of. Everyone looked up to her, and I was lucky to have her as a big sister. I wonder, would joining the Gilberta Company help me become amazing like Thule? I mean, what does he even do? Or what is Camille even doing? Because Thule was doing her seamstress stuff, but what are they going to have Camille do? I wonder. I was kind of tempted. Dad was inviting me to join the soldiers and help them protect the city, but working with Thule sounded a lot more fun. Before I could even try to respond, however, the boss of the planting company started a hand. No, Camille would do a lot better working for the planting company. You're more interested in books and toys than hairpins, cloth, and Rensham, right? Just like that, my heart turned to the planting company. Lutz was like the only other person as successful as Thule where we lived. He had become a Laharo at a major store despite being born into a family of woodworkers, which made him just as incredible. I really loved the toys and picture books that Lutz brought me. I cared a lot more about them than hairpins or cloth, that was for sure. Those kinds of things were for girls. I heard from Lutz that you want to start getting involved in the orphanage workshop and getting to a bunch of places, right? The boss of the planting company continued. So he's talking to Benno, essentially. I only really wanted to go to the workshop because Dirk and Conrad were there, but the idea of learning how the toys and picture books were made was pretty appealing. Thinking about it like that, the planting company seemed way better. Let's say they get to read the finished books before anyone else too. That sounded great. Whoa, 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 the boss of the Gilberta Company cried out. How come you're always trying to steal away the gems I find, Benno? Wasn't Lutz enough? As if you need anyone but Thule. We got to put people where they're going to do best. I was trying to decide what to do, but the two bosses had ended up in a full-on argument. Renee was telling me to hurry up and decide already. Apparently they wouldn't stop fighting until I made up my mind. Unsure of what to do, I turned to Thule for help. She came over with a gentle smile and gave me a pat on the head. Don't worry, Camille. You'll have plenty of time to think it over before your baptism, she assured me. The profession you choose will shape your whole life, so you need to figure out what you want to do yourself. Taking inspiration from others is fine, but you can't make excuses like saying that you only made your choice because someone else told you to. You'll end up full of regrets, and then you won't be able to work your hardest when you're blaming other people. Thule then looked over the two bosses, still wearing her warm smile, and said, in other words, you two, please let Camille decide for himself. Don't rush him. That must have been rough. They're both so stubborn, Lutz said, having been warming his Peru-shelled hands by the fire while listening to my story. He was always there to pat my head and cheer me on, and it made me wish that I had a big brother like him. Oh! This question! Oh my god, I can't wait to see how this is going to turn out. Lutz, are you, gonna marry Thule, I asked? She's about to come of age, isn't she? Feels like everyone's getting real excited about that. Most girls started looking for husbands and preparing for marriage when they were about to come of age, and it made sense that Thule would pick Lutz how often they hung out. Even our families agreed that they would make a lovely couple, which was another good sign since family connections had a big impact on marriages. There was also the fact that even with all their success, it was unlikely that either of them had the money to marry someone else from a major store. Well, I get that everyone's excited and us ending up together is the safest option, but who knows? Might not happen for a long time. Thule had her heart breaking, you know. What? Yeah, what? I'm a Camille on this one. What? Oops, that's supposed to be a secret. Come on, Lutz, you gotta tell me now. Who was it? Thule's so good at sewing and works so hard and... Oh my god. I was watching a video a while back, like a few weeks ago, or maybe more, I don't know, and there was something about Thule having had liked someone, but she couldn't be with them, essentially. And I know who it is, and they're not going to mention it because the person in question is in the room. You'll figure it out. There wasn't a boy alive who wouldn't find themselves staring at Thule, or how could anyone have turned her down? I was probably a little biased, but I was also genuinely believed that. Maybe it had to do with her social standing in our family or something, since our parents talked about that a lot. Yep, here we go. In the end, Lutz refused to tell me anymore, no matter how many times I asked. I want to talk about you, not Thule, he said with a grin. You've made your decision, right? I can see it on your face. I grinned back at him. I want to work with the planting company. I prefer working with books and toys over protecting the city or selling hairpins. Ah, mine. You sure raised him into a bookworm, huh? Lutz mumbled something too quietly for me to hear, but I asked him to repeat himself, but he just shook his head. He had way more secrets than I'd ever expected. If you really want to join the planting company, then you should go ask Mr. Gunther and the others for permission to study there, Lutz said. This is a good time as well, since the blizzards are calming down now. Study? I had a hard time becoming a merchant as the son of a carpenter, and now you're going to have a hard time as the son of a soldier. We'll let you stay at the planting company for about 10 days and give you all the training that you'll need. I could already read and do math thanks to my toys and picture books, but it turned out that there was a lot more I needed to know about the mindset of a merchant and the way that a world worked. Taking Lutz's advice was definitely my best option, since he had already gone down this path himself. I'll speak with Mark and Master Benno, Lutz said, but I'm pretty sure they'll take you in in a heartbeat. I mean, they were just talking about it. Really? Lutz grinned and nodded. The store gets busier in the spring, and next year's going to be even rougher than usual with our upcoming trip to Kernberger. I've got more free time in the winter, though. I'm underage and I can't go to the castle yet, so yeah. At the end of winter, Master Benno and the Laharos had their hands full going to the castle, but Lutz was done as soon as he finished preparing the books and study materials from the Rosemine workshop. You'll need to work on your language, posture, and etiquette, Lutz continued, listing all the areas I'll need to receive training in. But first and foremost, be sure to get permission from your mom and dad. Life's hard when you don't have your parents' support. He seemed to be speaking from experience, but I wasn't worried. Mom and Dad would definitely understand. It was like the doorway to my future was suddenly wide open, and that realization made me so thrilled. Lutz, I'm going to do my best. Yep, have at it. There was a quiet thwump as a Peru landed in the snow nearby. The new kids were getting the fruit off the trees way faster than Lutz and I could. The same was true for Dirk and Conrad. How come it looks so easy for them, I asked. Who knows? Oh, look, Mr. Gunther's waving. Looks like you're up, Camille. Right. I climbed the Peru tree to switch places with Dad. We're almost done, Camille. You take care of the rest, he said as he passed me on his way down. I took off my gloves and grabbed the first Peru by its stem, trying to warm it up. Dad looked over from a nearby branch while I was waiting and said, You seem in a good mood, Camille. Are your hands freezing? They are, but Dirk, when spring comes, I might get to go to the orphanage to see the Rosemine workshop. Lutz said that Lady Rosemine will give me her permission if I join the planting company. Really? I can't wait, Dirk exclaimed, smiling in excitement. The thought of one day getting to work with him and Conrad sounded amazing. Light started to stream in through the branches above us, marking the end of our gathering. The Perus began shining like jewels, and the tree waved back and forth like it had suddenly come to life, making loud, rustling sounds. I climbed down at once and watched the Peru tree start to disappear. The new kids, seeing it for the first time, were in complete shock. The tree stood stretched up into the air, then swooped down and vanished entirely. It was time for everyone to return home, so we put our baskets of Perus on our sled and started making our way back. Dad wanted to make sure the orphanage kids got back safely, so we accompanied them as far as the gate. Getting back into the city was harder than leaving it, and since the noon guard wouldn't be the same person who had seen Lutz and the others out, the new orphans probably would have been denied entry. Dad was going to speak to whomever was on duty to make sure they were allowed through. Things are a bit tense right now, so the guards wouldn't have let you all through just because they recognized you in Gale, Dad explained to Lutz. Make sure you come to me before doing this again. They'll trust me more. Thanks, Mr. Gunter. Just as he'd promised, Dad spoke to the guards and got all the orphanage kids into the city without issue. We passed through the gate, and the orphans headed back to the orphanage. On our way home, right before we turned a corner, Dad gave a Peru to Gil. Get this to Lady Rosemine, he said. I'll store it in the ice room and make sure she gets it. I'm counting on you. No, my Peru! They were so hard to gather, but Dad always gave one to the orphanage for Lady Rosemine. It was weird. Dirk, Conrad, and everyone in my family seemed to love Lady Rosemine way too much, so even if she didn't employ a lot of us. That night after dinner, I told my parents that there was something on my mind. They exchanged anxious looks in response. Then Mom started pouring tea. Dad moved about in his seat a little, took a sip from the cup that was set on the table for him, then gave me his full attention. "What is it?" he asked, his voice several times lower than usual. I was worried they would refuse, but I clenched my fist and looked them head on. "Mom, Dad, I want to make books with Lutz," I announced. "I want to work at the planting company and spread new books everywhere." Oh, Rosemine will love that. All of a sudden, Mom and Dad got all teary-eyed. I couldn't understand why. I'd expected them to refuse, or Dad to question me about why I didn't want to be a soldier. "Do you not want me to?" I asked, tilting my head at them. No, Mom said, wiping her eyes. She stood up, came to my side, and began stroking my head with a conflicted expression. "If making books is what you want to do, then I won't try to stop you. I'm on your side, just do your best." Dad nodded in agreement. In other words, I now have permission to study at the planting company. I'm gonna make books. I'm gonna grow up to be just like Lutz. Okay, let's see. How much longer have I done this? Oh. Hold on, how much more do I have left? I can't remember which one was the last one. Okay, the next one is the last one, okay. My son's departure. Mother, this is Justice. I have urgent news and must ask you to return home to the estate today. An ordinance have arrived for me while I was in the castle, sorting through gifts with Lady Elvira and Lady Florencia. I was surprised for a moment, but they both seemed far more disturbed. "Oh my, urgent news. What could it possibly be?" Lady Elvira asked, or said. "Riarda, Rosemine has not yet returned from the temple," Lady Florencia added. "I ask that you go home at once. You may have tomorrow off as well." I understood their extreme concern. Justice rarely sent such ordinances while I was busy with work, but Lord Ferdinand had personally asked me to evaluate the gifts being sent to Arensbach. I could not simply abandon this duty. "I shall graciously accept your offer and return home for today, but I will return to continue this work tomorrow," I said. "This is justice we are talking about. I cannot imagine it is anything significant." "That will not do, Riarda," Lady Elvira said, a sudden sharpness in her eyes. "I order you thus, as the mother of your Lady Rosemine, treasure the time you have left with Lord Justice. You do not know how much longer you will be able to help them as his mother." It was rare for her to look quite so emotional, and the look she was giving me pierced my heart. Lady Elvira was also sending her son to Arensbach, and due to the sudden change in plans, we only had a week left with Lord Ferdinand and our children. "Riarda," Lady Florencia said, "as these are gifts from one duchy to another, this work should most properly be carried out by members of the Archducal family, such as myself and Charlotte. Unfortunately, Lord Ferdinand did not request my aid directly, but I would suggest not giving that fact undue importance. Go and assist Justice." Even then, I was hesitant to abandon the duty given to me. I had spent my entire life thus far devoted to my work. Having sensed my conflicting emotions, Lady Florencia gave me a gentle smile. "Would it not be problematic if this matter of justices went unresolved, and Lord Ferdinand's schedule were to be interrupted as a result?" "Riarda, Elvira, you should both take tomorrow off. You may assist your sons with their luggage, clean their rooms, or what have you, as long as you make sure to spend some time with them as their mothers before they leave. This is an order. Is that understood?" Indeed, her expression seemed warm at first glance, but her indigo eyes carried a strength that one could not refuse. And when considered alongside the fact that I could not refuse an order from the Archducal family, my hands were well and truly tied. Both Lady Elvira and I knelt before her. We are grateful. We often saw and worked with our children as retainers, but we seldom had the opportunity to meet with them as parents. Today will perhaps be the last time we ever meet with our sons as family. "My apologies, Mother. I seem to have come back late," Justice said when he arrived at home, wearing a smirk that indicated there was no danger at all. Lady Elvira and Lady Florencia's concern have filled me with such unease, yet here he was grinning up a storm. I sighed and then raised my eyebrows at him. "We may be family, Justice, but as two working adults this was far too sudden, and at 4th bell no less. How many times have I told you to contact me at 3rd bell at the very latest? Any later than that does not leave me with enough time to prepare a meal. My lady's away at the temple for handover business, and unlike last year there's no embroidering to be done. Were you not entirely without work?" "I was sorting through the gifts for Arensbach as per an order from Lord Ferdinand, and in any case, whether or not I have free time does not excuse your rudeness. Do not put such a burden on our attendants and chefs. We would normally eat dinner at our place of work, so a sudden change of plans only served to inconvenience those working at our estate. As an attendant, Justice knew that it was our duty to create a reasonable work environment for our staff. Why then was he so incapable of managing that?" Justice gave me a curious look. "Mother, it amazes me that you can talk for so long. How do you say such things in a single breath? My fool of a son!" I was feeling a mixture of resignation that he would never change and outrage that he had yet to learn his lesson, but the most I could do was put my head in my hands. Was it just me, or had he not grown at all since his youth? Doesn't have to be a bad thing. Paying no mind to the fact that he had just given his own mother a headache, Justice handed me a sound-blocking magic tool and said, "Tell your attendant to leave. What comes next is a secret." He then turned on his heel and started toward his room. "How are things in the castle? I expect our sudden departure has been causing some chaos." "Indeed, we have an entire season less to dedicate to the handover. Lord Sylvester and the higher-ups of the Knights Order are in quite the panic." I replied, "Many winter plans are being impacted by this sudden change in schedule. How is Milady doing in the temple? Audley has informed me that Hartmut is tremendously busy." "Milady is uneasy about losing her guardian, but is staying strong nonetheless. She is preparing meals for him to bring to Arensbach, a hairpin to be gifted to Lady Letizia. Apparently that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. It seems as if she is keeping busy as a way of avoiding her sorrow. I am worried about how she will fare once Lord Ferdinand is gone." We soon reached Justice's room and closed the door behind us. I then turned to him and said, "So what is this urgent business that has taken me away from my work?" "Naturally, I wish to borrow the skills of my excellent attendant mother. Do help your adorable son with his packing. There's a lot I'm bringing with me, so I don't want our estate's attendants to see." Calling oneself adorable was anything but, though I did understand that Justice needed some assistance. His report a moment ago implied that he had a mountain of work to be done before his departure, checking the food and sweets that Milady prepared, cleaning up the High Priest's chambers, assisting Losfam in Lord Ferdinand's estate, and passing on his duties in the castle. He surely had no time to spare on his own preparations and chambers. Not to mention, once the High Priest's chambers have been cleaned out and Lord Ferdinand's luggage has been brought to his estate, Lady Rosamund will be staying at the castle in preparation for winter, Justice continued. As her head attendant, you will not be able to come here for the duration of her stay, no? Hence, in my urgent summons. It seemed that his schedule was even more packed than I realized. I do not know how to feel about using a member of the Archducal family to transport luggage, but I understand the circumstances, I mused. That said, doing all your packing between now and 7th bell is nigh impossible. You are lucky that Lady Francia has given me some time off. That's good to hear. I was planning to use some more forceful methods to free up your schedule otherwise. Justice! Do you really not understand how much sudden changes inconvenience others? I do, but right now it's hard to determine who can know how much in the castle. It's impossible to argue against that. Because I was Lady Rosamund's retainer, I was privy to information known only by Ehrenfest's topmost scholars. But such matters weren't for the ears of our estate's attendants. I can help you to pack, I said, but I refuse to sort through your mountain of clutter. Yes, I'm aware. I couldn't leave that to you anyway, Mother, as you toss it all away, even though each piece is a treasure to me. A treasure to you. I wonder what it all is. At a young age, Justice had developed a habit of gathering strange items that could only be described as junk and nothing more. To make matters worse, he refused to throw any of these treasures away, a stubbornness that caused the attendant who cleaned his room and me countless headaches. I recalled the rules we had enforced as a compromise of sorts. Keep it all in your hidden room, and do not complain if anything found carelessly strewn across your floor is immediately discarded. Only then had his room started to look more befitting of a noble. I will need to have winter clothes and daily necessities packed within the next few days, Justice said. Can I leave that to you, Mother? I plan to unregister my hidden room, so I need to box up everything inside and put it in a corner somewhere. Unregistering one's hidden room indicated one's resolve to never return there again. My daughter had done the same when leaving our estate after her marriage. I had felt the same sense of loss back then, too. Don't tell me you intend to bring everything from your hidden room to Arensbach, I said. Of course. Once things settle down over there, of course. I trust you to look after my things until then. That was his roundabout way of saying that he didn't know how bad things were going to be. There was a sudden burning sensation in my throat, and my stomach started to turn. I watched Justice as he disappeared into his hidden room with some boxes. Then I started packing clothes and small items from around his desk. He needed only the bare minimum to get through the winter, not unlike Milady's preparations for the Royal Academy. Anything he needed for spring and beyond would be sent over as the snow melted. But this isn't the same as preparing for the Royal Academy, I said to myself. He will need to attend winter socializing events, which means he will need to bring more clothing. I put aside a few days' worth of normal clothes and something for him to wear on the day of his departure, then began packing one winter outfit after another. I then started filling boxes with the items he was unlikely to use on a daily basis. Stationery like his writing utensils and such would naturally need to be placed on top, since he was bound to need it more often. It was precisely because he didn't want the estate attendants to touch his documents and such that he asked me to help out. Maintaining secrecy is especially crucial now, while we must be so careful about our intelligence leaking. The recent temple break-in and theft of our duchy's Bible was still fresh in our minds. And it turned out to be Viscountess Dalduff who perpetrated the crime. But Ehrenfest higher-ups all suspected that Lady Georgine had masterminded it all. It was also believed that Lord Ferdinand interfering with her plans had put her in a situation where she had no choice but to have him summoned to Arensbach as soon as possible. Why, oh why, did things have to turn out this way? I couldn't help but remember the days when I had served a young Lady Georgine, and the way she had played with my gudrun and justice. Her mother had given birth to 2 girls consecutively, which had put her future as the first wife in danger, and caused so much worry. It was then that Lady Georgine had vowed to become the next Archduchess for her mother's sake. Even now, I considered it a respectable and very pure-hearted decision. But then Lady Veronica birthed another child, a baby boy with whom she immediately became obsessed. She had showered the little Lord Sylvester with nothing but love, and when his poor health came to light, she had attentively cared for him, assigning someone else to look after the Archducal playroom in her stead. Lady Veronica had only been young when she lost both her mother and brother. She believed that the Liesgangs had poisoned them, so when her darling son had finally been born, she had become extremely anxious about losing him too. It was for this reason that she had chosen not to attend to him. Not chosen me to attend to him. My time spent serving Lady Veronica, raising Lord Karlstadt, and serving as Lady Georgine's head attendant had unintentionally given me some experience in raising potential future archdukes, which had made me a very appropriate candidate for the role. I cannot imagine how Lady Georgine felt when her head attendant was suddenly taken from her. As a member of a branch family in the Archducal family, I did not have a set lord or lady. My loyalty had always been to the ruling Archduke, whether that was the current Ob, his father, or his father before him. He would order me to serve whomever in the Archducal family was struggling to find an attendant, but perhaps on that one occasion I should have expressed more resistance. "Mother, is something wrong?" came Justice's voice. He had just stepped out of his hidden room with a box in his arms. I simply slowly shook my head. "I am simply thinking that I should not have left Lady Georgine's side all these years ago." "You're still regretting that?" Lord Justice asked flatly. "It wasn't your fault, Mother. It's your duty to serve whomever the Ob chooses. The fault lies with Lady Veronica, who wanted your service, and the previous Archduke who accepted her request." I couldn't help but give him a wry smile. "That professionalism is precisely why I thought you were so well suited for serving Ob Ehrenfest. You certainly did not follow my teachings growing up." Having been forced to leave Lady Georgine's side, I had instructed my children to attend to her in my stead. Gudrun had agreed and ended up becoming Lady Georgine's retainer, but Justice had refused, even going so far as to take the attendant course to avoid serving her. A second opportunity had then presented itself when the previous Archduke ordered Justice to serve Lord Ferdinand. I had rejoiced at the thought that he was obeying the Ob, attending to those who needed servants for the sake of their duchy. But then he had given his name to Lord Ferdinand. Had I refused as you did, and continued to serve Lady Georgine, then perhaps we would not be in this situation, I said. Lady Georgine and Lord Sylvester might have worked together to rule Ehrenfest and guide it down a brighter path. Huh? That would have put Lord Ferdinand in an even worse position than he is now. Lady Veronica and Lady Georgine are unlike in how violently they treat those who oppose them. I don't even want to imagine what might have happened if they had both targeted him at once, Justice replied, tearing apart my optimistic fantasy. It's not like you to get caught up in such fanciful notions, Mother. Who cares how Lady Georgine feels anyway? I glared at him. Justice, you need to be more... Good grief, you certainly have it rough, Mother, having to switch whom you serve so often. You can only work for one person at a time, but you have to be considerate of all the lords and ladies you've ever served. He took another box from his hidden room and stacked it in the corner. Even now, Lady Georgine has enough allies to comfortably threaten Ehrenfest. I can see it now. She's plotting Lord Sylvester's downfall with an excited glint in her eye, much like she did when they were younger. Once again, I was reminded that Justice's perspective differed so greatly from my own. He no longer saw Lady Georgine as his childhood friend, nor did he look back on their lost days together with any semblance of warmth. To you, Mother, Lady Georgine is a woman whom you once loyally served. To me, she is an enemy whom I must beat down and destroy. You are free to wallow in sentimentality, but I ask you, where do your priorities lie? I gave another wry smile as my son thrust reality in my face once again. Despite his words, I could tell he was unwilling to allow me even the smallest moment of nostalgia. I serve Ob Ehrenfest and Lady Rosemine, I said. That has at once slipped my mind. Indeed, Lord Ferdinand is leaving for the sake of our duchy. In turn, we are leaving Lady Rosemine to you. I was a little surprised to see Justice so concerned about someone other than Lord Ferdinand. But I hid those feelings beneath a reassuring smile. Unlike those of you going to Ahrensbach, milady has her retainers, her family, and her fiancé to worry about her. She will not be lonely for long. I pray that turns out to be true, Justice replied with a doubtful sigh. I sighed as well. My son treasured his lord enough to have given him his name. So it was entirely understandable that he still resented Lord Sylvester and Lord Wilfrid, who had been so lovingly doted on by Lady Veronica. At times he even resented them for things that weren't their fault. And while I was aware that this was simply how emotions worked, I always considered it tragic. Lord Ferdinand is more important to Justice than anyone else, after all. Back when Justice had given his name, he had cast aside his wife, his child, everything and everyone but his lord. He had a cold, ruthless side to his personality that wasn't apparent from his relaxed appearance and demeanor, and he openly stated that he would renounce anything that might so much as inconvenience Lord Ferdinand. In a sense, he was more like me than anyone else. I, too, had vowed to give up my entire life when I had sworn my loyalty to Ehrenfest. The next day, I made the absolute most of the time off that Lady Florencia had given me, and finished cleaning Justice's room with maximum efficiency, separated into neat piles were the luggage that he would be taking with him when he departed, his clothes for after winter, and the luggage that would be sent after Lord Ferdinand's star-binding when he was no longer a guest in Ahrensbach. Wow, you have my thanks. That's my mother for you. Praise me all you want, but this is the most I am doing for you. Good grief. My response had come out almost instinctively, but now silence hung in the air. I gazed up at Justice, although it was possible that we would meet in the future. After all, I was Lady Rosamund's attendant, and for Lord Ferdinand's retainer, it was unlikely that we would ever speak as family again. I need to think of something to say. Despite my best efforts, nothing that felt appropriate for our last farewell came to mind. A simple "be careful" would not change my son's willingness to rush headlong into danger, whenever he deemed it necessary for his goals. Ever since he was a child, not once had I actually seen him exercise caution. In short, saying something out of worry is pointless. My entire life was dedicated to the Archduke, and Justice was leaving for Ahrensbach with the lord to whom he had given his name. The words normally exchanged between a mother and her son ill-suited our situation. After some thought, I straightened my back and took a deep breath. Justice must have noticed this, because his goofy smile disappeared, and he straightened up as well. Do not forget the vow you made, I said. Do everything in your power to realize the will of the man to whom you gave your name. Understood. May our lives be spent for those we serve. Indeed, for those we serve. A small, proud smile arose on Justice's face. There was no doubt in my mind that he would remain wholly dedicated to his lord, living exactly as he wished. He was, without a shadow of a doubt, my son. Memories and farewells. Last one, guys. It has been the greatest honor to serve you. After saving my farewells to the high priest, though he was now the high priest no longer, I watched as he flew his high beast back toward the hit noble's quarter. Only once he and Lady Rosemary's group were gone, did Zom and I return to the high priest's chambers. Okay, this is from Fran's point of view. There was much to do even without our lord. Fran, how are the orphanage's preparations coming along? Lothar, the head attendant of the high priest's chambers, asked me upon our arrival. Getting each other up to date was the first thing we needed to do. The orphanage was planning to accept a great number of pre-baptism children this winter, and preparations were being made to that effect. We are progressing steadily with Wilma and Monica leading the effort, but winter preparations are our current priority, I replied. The problem is that we do not know how many children we are due to receive. We are unsure how many dishes or beds we would need, and neither Lady Rosamund nor Lord Hartman could tell whether we had enough clothes at the ready, since they did not know how tall or old the orphans were going to be. We were fortunate in that we would not need to prepare bedding and food. That would apparently be delivered when the children arrived, but there was still the matter of the furniture and other daily necessities. This is quite the challenge, Lothar said, narrowing his indigo eyes and scratching his light brown hair, as he always did when deep in thought. Lady Rosamund says that she will provide anything we lack, but as these are noble children, we cannot use their bedding and dishes as such. It was then that Emir, the youngest of all the attendants in the high priest's chambers, who had joined after I was reassigned to serve Lady Rosamund, blinked in surprise. Why is that, he asked. Would it not be most logical for them to bring what they already own? Lothar shook his head. That runs the risk of a room in the orphanage being better equipped than the rooms of the Blue Priests. Ah, I see. I would not want Brother Camphor to have worse living conditions than the new orphans either, Emir said, slumping his shoulders. Brother Camphor was exceedingly diligent compared to his fellow Blue Priests. He not only completed his work with the utmost care, but also made sure he was on good terms with his attendants. That's actually a good Blue Priest that you need to have. Someone who actually cares about his attendants. Emir saw him in an especially positive light, perhaps because he had gotten so used to accompanying him for the dedication ritual after Lady Rosamund became the High Bishop. Still, amiable though Brother Camphor was, his house was far from wealthy. That was why they allowed him only the bare minimum he needed to maintain his status as a blue priest, and took everything else for themselves. There were times when the high priest, or rather Lord Ferdinand, would send stern words to Brother Camphor's house. But Lord Hartmut strict acts only for Lady Rosamund, Ymir said, his voice tinged with worry. Is Brother Camphor going to be okay? I was once again reminded that I could no longer refer to the high priest as such. This was much easier said than done, though. I had been taken as his attendant shortly after he was made the high priest, and the fact that I needed to start calling him Lord Ferdinand felt both strange and deeply saddening. If we find out that his house is behaving especially cruelly, then we need only tell Lord Hartmut that we wished for Lady Rosamund to be informed. I said he will most likely determine the matter as being beneath her and opt to scold them himself. Oh, I see you are used to handling Lord Hartmut. Lord Ferdinand informed me of many ways to deal with Lady Rosamund's retainers back when they first began visiting the temple. Do tell us what you learned when we next have the time, Lothar said, but there was no need for him to sound so impressed. I could only manage to dry chuckle as I recalled those tense earlier days when my attention had been dedicated almost entirely to not angering the visiting nobles. These methods involve going through Lady Rosamund, so they may not be that practical for those of you working in the high priest's chambers. I said if you wish for her to be mobilized, then please discreetly consult either Zom or me, as we once consulted with Lord Ferdinand. If we act too carelessly, then we will only earn Lord Hartmut's ire. You really don't want that. Zom added. He is especially sensitive to Lady Rosamund being used. Everyone responded with noises of understanding. I was sure they were calling Lord Hartmut sitting atop the blue priest he had restrained. Yep. Oh, I can't wait to see that animated. Oh my god. There's a bunch of stuff I can't wait to see animated. If it ever gets animated. It better. The atmosphere in the high priest's chambers was always a lot more relaxed without a lord present, and with Monica in the orphanage, we were all former attendants to Lord Ferdinand, myself and Zom included. Ymir, are the blue robes that Lord Hartmut ordered ready? Lothar asked. Those in the high bishop's chambers often focused on winter preparations and coordinating with the lower city, but here the dedication ritual took priority. Lord Hartmut was still in his very early days as the new high priest. We could not risk his first dedication ritual ending in failure. Sorry, I was checking the time to make sure that it wasn't, 2-something. That said, with Lord Ferdinand and Brother Egmont leaving the temple and Lady Rosamund not returning for winter, we had very few blue priests at hand. Lord Hartmut had asked Lord Cornelius, Lady Rosamund's brother by blood, to help compensate for the shortage, as well as Lord Daniel and Lady Angelica. Ymir was apparently in the process of preparing blue robes for their sake. I am not quite finished with them, Ymir replied. Do not know much about the ceremonial robes of the Blue Shrine Maiden, so... In that case, we must hurry to find ceremonial robes for Lord Cornelius, Lord Daniel, and Lady Angelica. Fran, Ymir, let's go to the storage room. Everyone else, continue with your work as usual. You wish for me to join you, I asked. It made sense for him to ask Ymir, since he usually assisted with such preparations anyway, but I failed to see why he would want my help. Lothar gave a small smile. You have a similar build to Lord Daniel. I to Lord Cornelius, and Ymir to Lady Angelica. Are we not the perfect trio? I see, I replied. Ymir shook his head in protest. I'm a man! My build is nothing like Lady Angelica's. You are just a bit taller and on the thinner side, but you should suffice for us to get some rough measurements. Take that back. You're hurting my feelings. My god. We exited the high priest's chambers with Ymir, who was still clearly wounded, then headed to the storage room where the blue robes were kept. The everyday clothes were folded and put on shelves, along with their accompanying ornaments, while the ceremonial robes were hung up to keep them from creasing. Closest to the door were the ceremonial robes that Lord Ferdinand had used to wear. Seeing them reminded me that he truly was gone. In stark contrast to my sentimentality, Lothar went rifling through the robes with an entirely businesslike demeanor. Lord Ferdinand's robes are too large for Lord Cornelius. We do not have time to hem them, let alone measure him for more significant alterations. Come, help me search for something that may be more appropriate size. Fran, do you believe that Lord Ferdinand's ceremonial robes would fit you? I reached toward the robes, intending to hold them up to myself to check, when my hand stopped short. Something about touching the limp, empty robes just felt wrong. Lord Ferdinand is tall enough that I cannot imagine them fitting me, I eventually said. More importantly, the robes of an archducal family member would not suit a lay noble such as Daniel. Ah, did I not consider problems of status? Do you know each of their ranks? Lord Cornelius is an archnoble, Lady Angelica is a mid-noble, and Lord Daniel a lay noble, I said. The circumstances were urgent enough that they probably would not have complained, but as we were dealing with nobles, it was crucial that we take every precaution. Let us settle on the archnoble clothes first. Then we can search for outfits that are less extravagant in comparison, Lothar replied. He was evidently less concerned about status when leading lending robes to Lord Hartman, which immediately made me feel uneasy. I remember Lord Hartman kicking up a fuss over the furniture in the orphanage, director's chambers, not suiting Lady Rosamund. I think that he would do that for his lady, but not for himself. I don't think he would care when it comes to himself. On what basis did you select Lord Hartman's ceremonial robes, I asked. Did he say nothing of status? He did not, Ymir replied. Perhaps he simply did not mind, as he would only be wearing them once. In fact, Lord Hartman rarely expresses dissatisfaction about anything. He is also very easy to serve since he commutes from the noble's quarter. I wonder about that, Lothar interjected, crossing his arms. He may be staying in the temple for extended periods in the near future, namely when Lady Rosamund is here. Lord Ferdinand also began by commuting from the noble's quarter. He did? I asked, blinking in surprise. Ymir likewise indicated that this was his first time hearing such news. Oh, of course, I suppose I am the only one who was serving as his attendant from his very first day in the temple, Lothar remarked, scratching his light brown hair and seeming a bit solemn. I had joined the high priest's chambers around the time that the apprentice blue priests and shrine maidens were leaving the temple one after another. We had always been busy with the ever-increasing workload, and only now did it occur to me that we never spoke about the past. If you were unaware of that, then you may not know this either, Lothar continued. Lord Ferdinand hardly did any work at all when he first joined the temple as a blue priest. What? Ymir explained. Yeah, I have to agree with that. What? Lothar could not help but smile at this response. In truth, Lady Rosamund had already told me about Lord Ferdinand having had more time to brew and read before he became the high priest, but hearing it from another attendant made it somehow feel new. At the start, he only took 2 attendants, Lothar explained. He hired a chef so that those beneath him could eat, but he would return to his estate in the noble's quarter for every meal. Even lunch. He went all the way to the noble's quarter for lunch, I asked. Again, this was news to me. It must have been troublesome for him to fly there every day at 4th bell. I had to wonder whether he had a lot of work to do at the castle even then. As I was contemplating this unusual revelation, Lothar lowered his voice and said he did so because he anticipated the high bishop would attempt to poison him. I knew they were on bad terms, but poison? It had been clear to those of us serving Lord Ferdinand that he and the late high bishop did not get along well. We had never feared a poisoning attempt. In fact, those two were entirely uninvolved with each other outside of work and the distribution of money. Indeed, Lothar said, I was surprised when I first heard this, but it seemed that nobles must expect to be poisoned at all times. Lord Ferdinand even went as far as to warn us temple attendants that we would be at risk unless we built up a resistance of some kind. How could we not be on guard after that? The food prepared in the temple kitchen was thus eaten not by Ferdinand, but by the chef, us attendants, and those in the orphanage. Lothar went to explain that he once witnessed a great shrine maiden steal into the kitchen in the high priest's chambers and attempt to sneak something into one of the plates. He had ensured that she was swiftly captured. I reported the incident to Lord Ferdinand, who said that he would interrogate the great shrine maiden himself. I did not see what he said or did to her, as I was told to use that time to eat lunch. But she emerged with vacant eyes, and then that night there was chaos in the high bishop's chamber. Someone had poisoned his food. That must have been Lord Ferdinand taking his revenge, Ymir said, his lips curling as he fought back the urge to laugh. How did the high bishop fare? Lothar smirked. Everyone in his chambers was bedridden for 3 days with intense stomach pain. It was easy to imagine the late high bishop angrily stamping his feet while Lord Ferdinand listened impassively. We had all found the high bishop a source of constant frustration, so tales of his suffering filled us with vicarious delight. After all, the man had received his just deserts. I picked up a set of ceremonial robes, trying to hide the smile that had risen to my face. The clothes must have belonged to someone from a high-status household, for their designs were excellent and the material pleasant to the touch. Perhaps this will do, I said. I believe it would suit an archnoble. Excellent, Lothar replied. The hem and sash could easily be adjusted. We had decided on Lord Cornelius' ceremonial robes. Next we would need to find some for Lady Angelica. So what happens next, Ymir asked, unable to rest the incitement in his voice while holding the ceremonial robes of various blue shrine maidens to his chest. I cannot imagine that Bezin wants of all people would concede so easily. Naturally, he barged in on Lord Ferdinand upon recovering. We were all quite afraid, but Lord Ferdinand greeted his anger with an expression of exaggerated surprise. Once the high bishop had finished ranting about his own poison being used against him, Lord Ferdinand had merely given him a curious look and said, I do not see what there is to complain about. I even had the poison you attempted to feed me mixed into a jar, drastically reducing its toxicity. I did not think that the younger brother of a first wife would be so unaccustomed to poison. You speak often of your connection to the archducal family, so I suppose I must assist you with preparing for what that connection entails. The late high bishop had retreated shortly thereafter, understanding that Lord Ferdinand was threatening to poison him again. Ymir shuddered. I do not even want to imagine Lord Ferdinand saying something like that to me with a flat expression. I would be so scared that I would truly wish to cry. Indeed, the blue priests were similarly terrified when the High Bishop explained the situation to them, and from that point on, attendants could no longer be sent to the kitchen of others. Kitchens were guarded more carefully than ever before, and that was the end of the poison incidents in the temple. Good. This had all taken place when I was serving Sister Margaret, the orphanage director at the time. Wait. I thought that... If I remember correctly, in one of the earlier books, after Lady Rosamund was going to be adopted and everything, after part 2, in the side stories of the last book, didn't Ferdinand say that Sister Margaret had died before he entered the temple? Or did he say shortly after he entered the temple? I don't know. I had lived in the orphanage director's chambers, which was a good distance from the noble section of the temple, so word of this poison incident had never reached my ears. Just as that thought crossed my mind, I noticed that Sister Margaret's ceremonial robes were spread out before me, colorful and embroidered with flowers. The very sight caused so many old memories to resurface, and my teeth were chattering before I knew it. I've come so far. I've even been able to enter the hidden room in the orphanage director's chamber, so why now, after all this time? I clenched my fist. It was like someone had reached out and grabbed me by the heart, and each shallow breath seemed to catch in my throat. I had truly believed that I was over my tragic past, but the memories were carved so deeply into my mind that they were far from gone. As I returned my attention to my surroundings, I saw that Lothar was holding those very robes up to Ymir's chest. Is this flower embroidery not cute and feminine, he asked. Lothar, are you doing this on purpose, Ymir asked in response, a sudden harshness to his light blue eyes. I got between them and started acting as the mediator, though my true intention was just to get the robes out of my sight. They were about Ymir's size, and as Sister Margaret had been a men noble herself, they were appropriate enough for Lady Angelica, but I simply could not bear to see her wear them. Please calm down, both of you, I said. Ymir, Lady Angelica is not particularly fond of such feminine designs. Please make your selection based on size and status. Lothar, you are teasing him a little too much. Put these robes away, if you will. My apologies at once. I gave a quiet, relieved sigh as Lothar took Sister Margaret's robes away, then picked up a more subdued outfit and held it up to Ymir. How about this? I personally think the floral design would have better accentuate Lady Angelica's beauty, Lothar said, looking regretfully back at Sister Margaret's robes. If it hadn't been Sister Margaret's robes, I think they would have been fine. But since it was her robes, yeah, no. No! Ymir similarly fell into thought. It was seeming more and more likely that Lady Angelica would end up wearing Sister Margaret's ceremonial robes. Desperate to avoid that outcome, I started comparing the two women's figures in my mind. Lothar, Ymir, looked carefully. The bust would not fit Lady Angelica properly. These other robes would match her better. I see, Ymir said. I did not consider that. We'll use the other robes then. Fran, Ymir, Lothar exclaimed, sounding indignant. I had successfully prevented Sister Margaret's robes from being used, but now he was eyeing me carefully. He must have found my behavior suspicious. I returned the focus of our conversation to Lord Ferdinand in an attempt to distract him. So, when did Lord Ferdinand actually start living in the temple? Was that poison incident responsible? Let me see. It was to observe the former High Bishop and the temple in general. From what I remember, Lothar replied, going along with the change in subject. Lord Ferdinand would say that he risked encountering someone troublesome in his noble estate, so he began staying here instead. At the time, I assumed it was a lie to keep us from worrying about him, but now I believe it was a means for him to escape Lord Sylvester. That does seem likely, I replied. It was just like Lord Ferdinand to give some fitting excuse for keeping a close eye on those around him, though. This was a very believable exception. When was it that a mysterious noble had suddenly begun appearing at the temple, followed shortly by any number of ordinances that said, Sylvester, where in the world are you? When was it that I had worked out that Lord Sylvester was in fact the Archduke, and that these ordinances had come up from his guard knight, Lord Karlstadt? At this point I struggled to remember. I believe those will suit Lord Daniel, no? Lothar said. He was surprisingly muscular, so perhaps these would be a better fit, I replied. Lord Daniel was of average height for a noble, so there were more robes here that were about his size. I selected some of them as slightly lower quality than those we had chosen for Lord Cornelius and Lady Angelica, then moved on to searching for sashes, cords, and such to complete the outfits. Why do women's sashes come in so many whiffs and such varying decorations, Ymir asked. I have no idea which one to pick. Let us pick one similar to Lady Rosemine's in design so that Nicola and Monica have an easier time helping Lady Angelica dress, I said. Then indicated several potential options. Any of these will do nicely. Ymir looked visibly relieved. I have only ever served the High Priest, so I would not have been able to put together an outfit for a blue shrine maiden on my own. Well, this should suffice. I exhaled once we had all the sashes, cords, and such that we needed, but while I was feeling at ease over a job well done, Emir looked conflicted as though there was something he wished to say. Is something the matter, Emir? I asked. Well, is Lord Hartman, serious about this? I do not know about having guard knights assist with the ceremony. It is precisely because he is serious that he has ordered us to prepare ceremonial robes. I had seen Lord Hartman asking Lord Cornelius and the others for their assistance in the High Bishop's chambers, and when I conveyed what I had heard, Emir furrowed his brow in displeasure. Does that not mean the guard knights would be participating in the dedication ritual without having performed the fealty ceremony, he asked. Lord Hartman carried out his when taking his place as the high priest, but they have not carried out theirs. That will most likely be the case, yes. I have not heard of any knights simultaneously serving as blue priests. Will that even be permitted? Guard knights have thus far been forbidden from entering the ceremony hall, but now they're being allowed in simply because they have blue robes? I think we should at least have them perform the fealty ceremony and double as blue priests. In truth, Emir was not the only one feeling unsure about how nobles from outside the temple were participating in the dedication ritual. I, too, was quite hesitant. Hartman was making so many changes now as that Lady Rosemite can remain at the Royal Academy for an entire term, but I personally would have preferred that she return. Our musings were cut short as Lothar brought us back with a loud clap. I understand how you feel, Emir, but our priority here is to perform the dedication ritual as best we can, and ensure that the chalices are filled with mana. A weaker harvest throughout the duchy will mean less taxes paid for the harvest festival. Let us just be grateful that the nobility is being so thoroughly cooperative. Lothar was correct. A lack of mana for the dedication ritual would negatively impact everyone and ourselves included. Such decisions made by the High Bishop and the High Priest were not to be argued with. Furthermore, Lord Ferdinand agreed with Lord Hartman's suggestion. He did? Lord Ferdinand was normally so adamant about operating within the rules, yet here he was going back on his own guiding beliefs so that Lady Rosemary would not need to return to Airfest. This realization made me feel unusually warm inside. Lord Ferdinand certainly has grown softer, I muttered. Lothar smiled and nodded. It is all thanks to Lady Rosemary. I was surprised to see him, of all people, heed the words that young child so carefully, and make so many arrangements for her. Indeed, Emir added, I recall thinking that Lady Rosemary was quite something. She never faltered beneath his cold glare, and she came up with one solution after another each time she was scolded, never once giving up on her desires. I could not help but chuckle at his evaluation. It certainly was Lady Rosemary who brought about this change in Lord Ferdinand, Lothar said, speaking slowly and thoughtfully. We attendants were stricken with fear at the thought of us needing to return to the orphanage, and we did all that we could to save Lord Ferdinand and read Lord Ferdinand and guess his intentions. Lady Rosemary, in contrast, fought to make her own feelings heard. Perhaps that's what separates us. I still can remember how infuriated and exasperated Lady Rosemary had been when she had failed to understand Lord Ferdinand's intentions. There is doubtless some truth to that, I said. Perhaps her being so unpredictable also factors into it. Her speech and actions seldom conform to the logic of nobles or the temple. That surely forced Lord Ferdinand to observe her so closely. After learning that Lady Rosemary did not understand the more indirect language that nobles used, Lord Ferdinand had started interacting with her in increasingly blunt and direct ways. It had even reached a point where, back in her days as a Blue Shrine Maiden, Lady Rosemary had come to associate Lord Ferdinand's hidden room with long and criticizing lectures. I wonder when Lord Ferdinand went from grumbling about her antics to treating her with such care. It was such a gradual change that I cannot quite pinpoint it. As of late, she has seemed particularly hesitant about the handover process, Lothar noted. I was surprised to see how suddenly the distance between them closed. I was more surprised that Lord Ferdinand accepted it without even trying to rebuke her, Emir added. He did not call her a bother, nor did he pick her up and toss her out of his chambers for being too annoying. We all chuckled as we recalled just how much he had treated her like a pest at times. It seemed to me that Lord Ferdinand was not used to being considered an equal, where one would act with concern for him, and he would act with concern for them in turn. I sometimes saw him deep in thought. I'll never forget Lady Rosemary rampaging around doing everything in her power to make the High Priest understand that there are people who care about him, Emir said. Lothar put a hand over his mouth to hold back his laughter, and it wasn't long before I was doing the same. Everyone saw it all, Lady Rosemary. That said, I saw Lady Rosemary's actions as less of a rampage and more of a desperate attempt to get through to Lord Ferdinand. She had spoken directly and as freely as someone who had no worries that their feelings might be rebuffed. And with such careful consideration, it was identical to how she interacted with her family in the lower city. If only Lord Ferdinand had changed sooner, perhaps then Lady Rosemary would not have cried alone after being forbidden from meeting with her lower city associates in her hidden room. And if their warm, caring relationship had been given room to grow further, perhaps Lord Ferdinand would have one day come to express his emotions honestly instead of disregarding them entirely. Oh God, as the times are goner, I pray that you undo the present. Take us back to before these two were separated. But no matter how much I prayed, my wish would not be granted. I was also aware that this change between them had come about precisely because of their separation. Had been decided. Going back in time would only re-establish the distance that once kept them at arm's length of each other. I knew all this, but after seeing how far they had come, I could not help but feel frustrated that it had all ended so soon. We have all we need for the ritual, Lothar said. We may now depart. I picked up the full ceremonial outfit we had chosen for Lord Daniel, then went to leave. As I turned toward the exit, however, I spotted Lord Ferdinand's ceremonial robe still hanging by the door. Fran, is something wrong? I still cannot believe that Lord Ferdinand's ceremonial robes are here, I said, feeling a profound sense of sorrow as I gazed upon them. Lothar and Ymir looked at them as well, and for a while we remained completely silent. They were all likely feeling a similar melancholy. Or that Lady Rosamund will only be here in the temple for a few more years, Lothar suddenly added. It had already been decided that she would move on from the temple after coming of age. Perhaps we would experience the same sadness then as well? The very thought of that departure ate away at me until my heart felt strangely hollow. It was like a depressing cloud hung over me. Am I going to be left alone again, I wonder? I mused aloud. As a great priest, there was no place for me but the temple. Lord Ferdinand had also already left me behind, and it was inevitable that Lady Rosamund would one day do the same. It surprised me how much that frustrated me. It was my first time learning that I had these feelings at all. I had felt no sadness when Sister Margaret went. Well, of course! Of course you wouldn't have felt that way! How she treated you, no! I would have been worried if that was the case. Only a deep sense of relief. Yet now the mere thought of losing those whom I served made my heart ache. I too had changed a lot. Personally, I would rather stay here in the temple, even if Lord Ferdinand asked me to leave, Ymir said. The whole outside world is too scary. Lothar agreed, and the two of them went on ahead. If Lord Ferdinand or Lady Rosamund wished it, I would accompany them to an entirely new world. I swore that in my heart and knelt once more before Lord Ferdinand's ceremonial robes. Okay, volume 21 is done, everybody! Oh, we get to see this! Welcome back, Lady Rosamund. Jeez, I can't tell who's the bad guy here. With that, Rosamund began to fear for the temple's future. He's just sitting on, he's like, oh, hello, Lady Rosamund. Ferdinand gave me such an amazing charm. 5 times as many face stones. I can only pray that your charms are at least somewhat eases the burden of those around you. Huh? A single uninterrupted year at the Royal Academy living as a normal student. Ferdinand! Seriously, you should have said something like, I gave you that charm so you can always feel safe even if I'm not there. Or even if that isn't true. Why bother lying? You're so hopeless when it comes to women's feelings. Well, the line you suggested would count as a proposal. That would have counted as a proposal? Really? Dude! Rosamund, you still have a lot to learn. Oh my god. We're going to volume 22 next, and that'll be tomorrow. See you guys then.